Given that I harvested this soursop, the guayabana, from this little baby tree right here, seems like a good opportunity to speak about the soursop. This fruit is one of my favorites in the jungle. There are two kinds, there's a sour and a sweet sop. Personally, I prefer the soursop. I believe, and I'll get to this in a sec, there's a field of other soursop that I planted here. It came from a lot of trial and error. Soursop it's unique and it's particular in how it likes to grow. I've got some further up on the land. Part of the land that I'm standing in now, this is the more clay-rich soil. It's a swamp for half the year. There's a lot more shade. Right behind me is a natural reserve where these massive giants exist. Over the course of the day, they're creating more and more shade. I've grown a lot of soursop, given it's one of my favorites, and for its edible fruit, its medicinal value, and just the rate at which it grows. It is rather stunning, and it looks really good in the dry season. It doesn't seem to lose its leaves too much. It can be very drought tolerant. Arguably, location matters the most. So there are some that I've found being up above in the more arid part of the land. They're not doing so well, right? They will, well, that's tough to say because some of them are doing better, but soil conditions can change so much in subtropical climates. Just being in this part of the land that I'm at now, we call them quebradas, where a heavy accumulation of rain, there's the ditches, right? Drainage ditches or valleys of the volcano. So as this all comes in over time, runoff, all the sediment build up, so you get multi-layers within your own soil. But what I have found, and the reason I'm here in the lower part of the land now speaking with you, is because there are about 8 soursop here, and they're doing exceptionally well. Weirdly, some of them are growing faster than others, but also I noticed that there were times when a season when I was away and I'd asked some of the guys to come and clean up this area, they might have chopped one down. But speaking to its resilience, it just bounced right back up. You can chop this thing down to its bare bones and somehow it still perks up like everything's okay. So that being said, uniquely, I don't know how old this one is in particular, but if I'm right, and I planted it just 2 years ago, it had given me its first fruit. So I've been challenged by this fruit because there is a leaf-footed bug that also exists in this area. I've built some bird boxes around here to capture some of these. They're a yellow sparrow, but they'll come in and they'll eat this leaf-footed bug, which helps a lot because what these bugs can do, and if they're left unchecked, is tap into these young fruits when they're nice and delicate and rot them from the inside. So we see a lot of this black pod disease, but needless to say, this one has made it. And for the sake of this video, I want to share it with you. The soursop, the way you know it's ready is that you can just rip this apart. Now, I think this one could have even gone another day or two, but given it's getting a bit too soggy, I didn't want to risk it. Now you can take this core out, which is still also very sour and tasty. Wow. Yeah, seriously, if you haven't had a chance, so you shouldn't be able to just bite into it, it should really melt. Yeah, there are a lot of benefits to this plant. People are now realizing about its leaves. They have incredible cancer fighting properties. So inhibiting these cells from continuously regenerating. Making a tea out of the leaves, it's commonplace here for us in the jungle. Like when you're making a tea, you throw together some mango leaf, some cashew leaf, some guayabana, why not? And guava. Wow, I want to talk about guava in another episode, but everyone knows teas is, I don't know, black tea, that whole strain, but most leaves you can make a tea out of, and you'll find your medicine within that. So I'm gonna take a bite out of this and come back to you in a sec. All right, I'm almost done delighting in this fruit. The way you know it's ripe, like I said, is just that really soft, mushy. I mean, it's almost like it's rotting, which is why this also makes it challenging to sell in stores or to find. If you're lucky, some people are selling guayabana juice. It can be pretty seed heavy, but all of these plants, the trees that are here, I had eaten several really, really delicious guayabana And I dropped all their seeds into one particular spot that was humid and shaded. And before you know it, they're all sprouting. So, a lot of times people go and buy the fruit from a nursery, but you don't really need to. In fact, sometimes even just tossing the seeds around here, some might sprout. And they're pretty distinct in their growth, so it's hard to miss them. I'm gonna walk over in a sec to our guayabana, a soursop that's about 3 years old, just to give you a sense of like how big they can get. It's still not that big. Big thing you want to do, like this guy right here has some tall upper leaves, so while it's young, I would just bring this down and chop its crown. I like to do this kind of cutting on the new moon or after a full moon, because it is true that there's a lot of life force and sap that flows between these trees, amongst these trees. So you want to make sure you're doing all your chopping or pruning, I believe, just at a right moment, because if not, you might, well, just unintentionally chop off the crown where its energy might be, and not stunt it per se, but who knows. Here is a 3-year-old soursop, so you can kind of see what it's doing. It's getting a lot of bush, and that was entirely intentional. So this one I practiced the coppicing here at the top, which is, it's important to me because also these fruits, you want to be able to reach for them, and if you are late to the game and you miss the time to cut it early when they get really big, sometimes it's not even a problem because the branch, it's so heavy and the branches aren't that strong, right? Again, another reason I don't like the wind, they can snap easily. I could show you another soursop that thought it could get really tall, and then the wind came and completely changed its mind, which actually worked out because now it's really bushing out from the base, which is another reason that you might want that. So there's a few fruits that are happening here. So there's 2 fruits that are prominent right now. This is, by the way, what a flower looks like. So when that flower opens, it's really a kind of a unique looking flower. By the way, there's a bunch of vines that are growing on the trees, and honestly, everything that's in this area, they have little bean pods, so I don't mind it. They seem to be fixing nitrogen and also creating great cover. But periodically, I do need to go in and strip them off the base so that the tree can have its foundation and not be suffocated. I'm always impressed by how prolific this tree can produce, and just as a part of nature, a lot of these fruits won't make it. Just a moment ago, I saw up here there was a lot of action on this fruit, and it's starting to develop some black spots. I've lost a lot of the soursop to this leaf-footed bug, and the next solution is just to introduce the birds that would eat them and manage the species. But also another one is, well, there's 2 more. What if the tree becomes resilient enough that it creates its own anti-venom or becomes anti-venom? Yeah, however it needs to be more resilient, right? And the fruits that do survive without any intervention, those could be the next generation of the trees that survive in this area because they're adapted to what's going on here. They're in their genetics. There are instructions, which is really cool. But the last thing, and it's, for those that really want their fruit, just to get some cheesecloth bags, right? These little mesh bags. We can put them around fruits so they don't get, attacked by bugs. That's another really beneficial one because it also lets that fruit focus in its growth and not so much deterring the bugs, so it'll become bigger, juicier, and have all those flavors that we all desire in the fruits. But needless to say, for all those reasons and more, the soursop guayabana is a must-have in the forest. This can be a lower story, mid-story tree. It needs not a whole lot from us, right? The fruits are generally ready. I've had some of these already throughout the dry season. Now we're entering more of the wet season. We had this one 10-inch rain, 10 centimeter rain, and that seemed to perk everything back up and really hydrate the soil such that these new flowers are coming. But we were also I've been deceived because we haven't had any rain since then. So hopefully a lot of these fruits have their stored energy and can continue to produce. But I would not sleep on the soursop. You can pick up fruits from local markets, and this wet season in particular, like all fruits, just save the seeds, store them, right? Now, you don't need to go through the efforts of necessarily planting them in bags and letting them be so dependent there. Instead, just find a nice shady spot and put them all on the ground. That's really advantageous. Once they all sprout and they're reasonable size, then you can transplant them. Now, when they're small enough, you want to be careful that they don't get overpowered by the jungle. So there can be some strategies there, or at that point you can take the seeds that have germinated and then put them into bags. But the key here is you don't want to wait too long in planting them in the ground. Whether it's in a bag or in the ground, you can, those roots are going to go deep to find their water. And in bags, the roots are a bit deceived. They think they've hit something, so they start producing up. But then at that point, if you put them in the ground too late, right, they won't have enough time that season to establish. So a lot of different strategies here, but the best strategy is plant your seeds, and you don't necessarily have to buy them. Go and eat the fruits. If you really enjoyed a soursop or a sweet sop, then each of these guys make like 100 seeds, and each of those seeds can germinate and become the next generation. So love it, do it for the majesty of nature and being part of it. I wish you nothing but luck.